This is extreme TV, grizzly bear style. These bears are taking great risks walking the train tracks in Banff National Park. Seconds from staring down a speeding train. When locomotives and wildlife collide, the wildlife rarely survives. In the past 17 years, 17 grizzly bears have been killed by trains between Banff and Yoho National Parks. In fact, train strikes are the leading cause of death among grizzly bears in this area. Each one is a devastating blow to a threatened population that already reproduces at an excruciatingly slow rate. Biologist Colleen Cassidy St. Clair assembled a team to study the problem and perhaps change the fate of bears in the park.
That we're in Canada's first national park with Canada's foundational transportation mode and dealing with grizzly bears, which are threatened in Alberta and iconic to a lot of people.
Jonathan Bax is a PhD candidate and a member of the research team. He wanted to use his degree in engineering and combine it with his passion for wildlife conservation to help tackle the problem. He started with a hard truth about trains.
Trains can't slow down safely very fast, and they can't change direction.
Bears, on the other hand, can, but only if they have enough warning. And that is the premise of Bax's groundbreaking invention, a bear warning system.
We've designed it to address specific hotspots on the railway where animals tend to die more often. We detect the trains with both magnetic and vibration sensors. No matter which way the train is coming, these warning signals will go off 30 seconds before the train arrives. Small, compact devices that emit flashing lights and sounds, not unlike the road rail crossing signals that you would find anywhere else in Canada. But these are smaller, more portable, and specially designed to attract the attention of wildlife.
The warning system isn't designed to startle or scare the bear. The trains are frightening enough. It's simply an early alert to tell them that even if they can't see or hear the train because of topography or curves in the track, a train is on the way and they'd better move. Cameras in nearby trees are giving researchers reason to believe the system is giving bears and other animals a warning of up to 30 extra life-saving seconds. They caught images of this bear on the tracks at the very time the lights and sounds of the warning system went off. That was seconds before the train had even come around the bend. That's just the latest of many mitigation efforts to keep bears away from dangerous trains. But to really know how to fix the problem, researchers needed to know why so many grizzlies were suddenly getting killed by trains in the first place. It wasn't always this way. The railway from Calgary to Banff was built in 1883, part of a transcontinental railway that was practically and symbolically essential to Confederation. For well over a century, the trains came through, and collisions with grizzlies were exceptionally rare. Around the turn of this century, something changed. And that's when grizzlies started getting killed by trains at an alarming rate. By 2012, researcher Colleen Cassidy St. Clair and her team had joined forces with CP Rail and Parks Canada, looking for answers.
We're all trying to solve an issue that is a concern for all Canadians.
Dwight Borden is a resource conservation manager for Parks Canada.
It's a national park. We're a world leader in conservation, and it's one thing that the public is concerned about and we're concerned about. Try to come up with solutions to reduce mortality.
The researchers started tracking a group of grizzlies that had been previously collared by Parks Canada to learn which bears were frequenting the dangerous tracks. Then they examined hair samples and bear droppings, or scat, to correlate their diet with thousands of travel points in the tracking area.
We can tell right away, first, is there grain in a scat? And it looks pretty much the same coming out as it did going in. We can also tell if the diet is mostly vegetation or whether there's been some animal food in it. We can usually tell that from hair. But even if we can't see hair, we can often see maggots in the scat.
Why does that matter? Well, it was widely believed the grizzlies were being struck in large part because they were foraging for grain, canola, barley, and lentils that had spilled off the cars of moving trains. But it turns out only 4 of the 21 collared bears were spending more than 20% of their time on the railway to find grain.
So that really switched our thinking from what we had believed, which was this was something that all bears did some of the time. We learned that really to eat grain seems to be something that a few bears specialize on doing. And then a further surprise came when we looked at the nature of those 4 individuals. They weren't all the same kind of bear. 3 of them maybe could be put in one category. They were teenagers and skinny and probably having a tough time making a living.
The 4th is Bear 122, also known as the Boss. The 270-kilogram giant rules the rail, and he's tough enough to have survived a train strike. His food of choice are the carcasses of deer, elk, and moose, which have not. Over the last 5 years, it became clear to researchers that grizzly mortality was a lot more complicated than just bears being drawn to the track by spilled grain. In fact, there's a laundry list of changes to their environment which may be contributing factors. Expanded highways and parkways to accommodate an increase in park visitors has also changed their habitat. Climate change has affected hibernation patterns, as well as the locations where bears can access critical food sources. But St. Clair believes, perhaps most importantly, there may be a direct correlation between grizzly train strikes and a depletion of available meat.
I think the biggest effect size we can see from the onset of the mortality of the grizzly bears is the reduction in the elk population that came about almost immediately after the recolonization of the Bow Valley by wolves.
With less elk to eat, St. Clair surmises it is the protein-rich vegetation that might be the biggest draw for bears to come to the areas around the track. For such a multifaceted problem, Parks Canada, CP, and the bear researchers are trying a multitude of solutions. Joe Van Humbach is CP's manager of environmental assessment.
Discount that grain is one of the contributors. So we do have a rail mounted vacuum truck, which we go along and pick up grain piles whenever there is a large spill. And we're going to be opening up sight lines for bears so that they can see trains further back. We're going to be doing increased vegetation management to reduce the number of dandelions and other berry species along the right-of-way to stop, to hopefully prevent bears from being drawn to the tracks.
We're also focused on off-track mitigations, which are creating trails and travel routes for grizzly bears as an alternative method as opposed to using the railway. We're also looking at research showed that prescribed fire and forest thinning to create alternative habitats for bears that have better food production.
There is reason to hope. In recent years, the rate of trains killing one of Canada's most iconic, majestic, and threatened animals has slowed significantly. Carolyn Dunn, CBC News, Banff National Park.